Now, Baroness Brown, if I can come to you now, what do you feel you've learnt during this crisis?
I hope we have a country have learned that actually we can do things very fast when we need to in bureaucratic, or even in bureaucratic organisations like the NHS. We've been trying to move, for example, to online consultations for years. Now we've had to do it. It's been done in weeks. I hope we've all learned that we don't need, or many of us don't need to drive into work or fly to meetings. I think many of us in cities have really learned how much we need to value our green space, and that we need more of it, and we need to be prepared to invest in it and maintain it. And I really, really hope, emphasising what George has said, that actually we've all learned, and our governments have learned, that we do need to make sacrifices now for predictable risks in the future. The scientists had predicted this was coming, and we were underprepared, and that is very comparable with the situation with climate change.
Yes, and also the crisis, we've seen the biggest drop in global emissions on record. What should the government be doing to ensure that we can face the coming recession without returning to business as usual?
Well, the first thing that we on the Committee on Climate Change have written to the Prime Minister to say we want to see is that the core to the economic recovery are climate investments that will support our move to net zero and making and building the country's resilience for the impacts of climate change, that will build our economic recovery and provide jobs. And there are some things we can get on with quite quickly, which will have impact all over the country. So, for example, that issue of building retrofits to make buildings really energy efficient, to make them resistant to higher temperatures, so ensuring they have good ventilation, they can cope with high temperatures, ensuring they're water efficient. Those kinds of things will create employment all round the country, so in every area. We could be getting on with the enormous amount of tree planting we need to be doing, and woodland restoration, again creating jobs all around the country, contributing to taking CO2 emissions out of the atmosphere, so to our mitigation challenge, but also if we plant them in the right places, they're contributing towards adaptation by giving us flood resilience in river catchments and things like that. So immediate climate investments to support our economic recovery and create jobs for those many people who are going to need them. Secondly, let's embed the behaviour changes that we've seen. For example, the fact that so many of us have discovered we can work very effectively from home, and government should set an example. In government departments, in the public sector, we should be seeing a real drive for enabling people properly to work from home and continue this reduction in travel. We certainly need to avoid lock-in as the economy comes back again. And so, for example, we should take the opportunity of low oil prices, not to enable people to use vastly more oil at low cost, but to start putting proper carbon taxes in place, so that because the oil price is now so low, that isn't going to make things more expensive for people, but it'll generate some money for the government it can spend on other things, and it'll stop a great surge, for example, in car travel, because suddenly petrol becomes very cheap.
How can the economy afford at a time like this the sort of investments that Julia is talking about there?
Well, look, I think that we can't afford not to make the investments. Again, there's no jobs on a dead planet. There's no profits on a dead planet.
I was asked to chair a subcommittee of the Committee on Climate Change to look at what we would recommend to improve the health of the population might fit with a zero carbon target. And we're looking at transport, food, buildings, air, and if you take the actions that will improve health, by and large, they will contribute to a climate change agenda. There's certainly no conflict here. and improving the health of population, it turns out, and air pollution is a good example, taking the right steps to improve the health of the population will also help with reducing global warming, with dealing with the climate change emergency.
Not only do I think that we shouldn't be giving oil and gas companies any more money, we should be making sure that they get no money at all from the financial services sector, the City of London. We've got to make sure that every bank, every asset manager completely divests from fossil fuels. And that's important because the planet is burning. I mean, the short-term profits of the fossil fuel industry and the financial sector are not more important than the future of the planet. All fossil fuels need to be shut down as fast as technologically possible. And so what we need to do is flip the Paris Agreement and the Climate Change Act on its head. That looks to the date of 2050, by the time which we need to decarbonize. What we need to be doing is saying we need to do it as fast as technologically possible. I think planes are different because we don't have a technological alternative right now, but we can do steps like in France to say that plane journeys are shut down if there's a rail equivalent, and that plane journeys are unnecessary. So I have a PhD in pensions and institutional investment. And the highest performing pension fund in the last few years has been the Church of England Pension Fund, which has had a divestment strategy. So there is simply no credible evidence to say that we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater if we divest completely. On the contrary, oil assets, coal assets, fossil fuel assets are stranded assets. They can't be used. Their value is going to be very, very low in the very short term, and probably, well, I hope not with another crash. But we've got to divest as fast as possible. And I appreciate that might not be the conventional wisdom at the moment, but the conventional wisdom at the moment is leading to the fires in Australia, the Arctic and the Amazon, and it's got to stop.
I'd like to see a real focus on better homes, starting with social housing. Also, we can put much stronger requirements on the rented sector to make sure that we have homes that are cheap and carbon efficient to heat and stay cool in the summer. So, you know, it's shocking in this country that we still have people who die because of the cold in the winter, and we will have increasing numbers the way we're going who die because of overheating in the summer. So better homes, and starting with our focus on the kind of, you know, the homes that some of these people, some of our heroes may be living in. And we're going to need a big program of retraining and reskilling for those people who lose their jobs because of COVID, for those people who work in industries that are going to be being faded out as we address the climate change issues. We need to be getting people ready for the good new jobs in the industries that are going to be growing. And we need the science and innovation funding to develop the new solutions and to help grow the new low carbon businesses that so many entrepreneurs in the UK are already trying to start. And we need to help them grow and become our industrial base of tomorrow. And then we need the tree planting, the peat restoration, the green infrastructure that are going to contribute to both mitigation and adaptation to the changing climate, but also are going to make this back into a much more green and pleasant land for our heroes to live in.
We've got 20% unemployment in the States. That's worse than the Great Depression. We're coming up to 10% unemployment in the UK. And so unless there's very, very fast government action, we will be back in, you know, the same sort of position that we looked at in the 1930s. Now, I don't think for a second that it's necessary that we have, it's not inevitable that we have a depression. But there are very, very important measures that we need to take to avoid that. So one is ensuring that people have job security, you know, so that's what's got us into this incredible unemployment disaster in the first place. The second is to make sure that people have voice at work, so that, you know, like Denmark, like Germany, employees have the right to elect members of the boards of directors who are making dismissal decisions. And a lot of us work or have worked at universities where, in fact, we have quite a bit of workplace democracy. You know, so for instance, at Cambridge, Regent House elects the people in the management body. Democracy at work is the second most important thing to ensure that we don't go back into the situation that we have found ourselves in now. But then the third thing is that if we've got a lot of unemployed people who need jobs, well, there are tons of things that we could be doing. And that could be, Julia mentioned planting trees, and that fits with the agricultural bill that's coming through. In fact, it might already be on the statute books. But so there's a replacement for the common agricultural policy, which gives out lots of subsidies to people in the farming sector, in the agricultural sector. And we need to make sure that those subsidies go towards projects that are getting rid of ongoing climate damage.
And that would be the land for heroes I would like to see, because at the moment we're importing 50% of our food. We export tons and tons of potatoes. We import from the other side of the world the same number of potatoes. It's madness. The amount of carbon that is used in terms of food production is massive. So learning from the past about using the countryside around and within the cities to grow, and not sending our waste to the other side of the world, but learning to reuse our waste in a productive fashion.